What is up, everyone, and welcome to Pencils Down, a podcast about education, policy, policy education, and everything in between. My name is Sam Zuckert, and this is episode 2, The Swiss Apprentice. Every episode here at Pencils Down, our syllabus contains 3 sections: Study Hall, School Days, and the Chicago Policy Review. In Study Hall, we will talk with someone who has had interesting experience or insight into current education and policy issues. And today for Study Hall, we have a very special guest, Bruno Ryff, the Consul General of the Consul General of Switzerland in Chicago. Consul General Ryff was kind enough to join us today to speak with us about the Swiss education system, their apprenticeship program, and the Swiss model of vocational education. Consul General Ryff, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sam, for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Absolutely. Now, some of our listeners may not be as familiar as others with Switzerland. Can you give us a brief overview of the country that you so well represent to get us started today?
Yeah, sure. Well, Switzerland is a small country with roughly 8.5 million inhabitants in the middle of Europe. It's a sister republic with the United States. So we have a very similar structure with at the federal level. Then what the states are in the United States are the cantons in Switzerland and the municipal level. The element which is added in Switzerland is that we're a direct democracy, so the citizens can also decide on new laws and important issues. A bit what we have, for example, in California, which was inspired actually by Switzerland. But important for education in comparison, we have 4 national languages in Switzerland, which is German, French, Italian, and Romansh. This has, of course, an impact in the education system. And generally, Switzerland is considered as being the most competitive and the most innovative economy in the world. So I do suppose that education has an impact on that.
Yeah, so let's learn where all that innovation gets started.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just start out with some basics. At what age do children generally start formal education in Switzerland?
Well, in Switzerland, kindergarten is compulsory, and it's an independent part of the elementary school. Compulsory education lasts 11 years in Switzerland, and it starts in the year a child turns 4. On July 31st, and then it starts in August.
Great. What kind of educational opportunities are available to students before formal schooling begins? Preschools, daycares, things like that.
There's daycare. There are daycare options, public ones and private ones, and that's actually, one of the huge advantages of the Swiss education system is that it's basically free. The part which can be pretty costly is the daycare part before kindergarten.
Mm. So once students start at kindergarten and in primary school, what do those schools look like in Switzerland? I know that's a broad question.
Well, an advantage in Switzerland certainly that classes are usually pretty small. Mm-hmm. So you have in most cantons you have a maximum of 22, 23 students per class. And at the primary level, students, they acquire and consolidate the basic skills of reading, writing, and arithmetic. And they gain insights into the environment and learning working techniques. They often work on the same topics in different subjects. And closely related to these are the study of natural, social and cultural environment, as well as arts and crafts and sport activities. The focus and objectives of these lessons are defined in the curriculum, and students learn and work increasingly independently and on their own responsibility.
So for each primary school, in America, there's a big debate kind of about school choice and school assignment, where it's not only traditionally students are assigned to schools based on where they live. In America, especially in major cities, it sometimes diverges from that. Primary schools in Switzerland, are students assigned based solely on geography, or are there other types of school assignment methods?
It's based on geography, yes. It depends where the parents live and pay their taxes.
Mm-hmm. There's a divide in America, very big, between public and private schools. From what it seems, most students in Switzerland attend public schools. Is that correct?
In Switzerland, you have about 5% of kids attending private school. It has risen in the past years. This has reasons of ideology, values by the parents. One of the best examples is the Montessori, Rudolf Steiner system. And then, of course, it depends also on the performance of the kids and the parents who have a certain ambitions and the kids do not perform. They have maybe a tendency to send them to private school. But Switzerland, at the same time, is one of the few OECD countries where public school students clearly outperform private school students in terms of performance.
Oh, wow.
So it's not that you raise the level with a private school.
It's more of a specific need for a specific
That's right,
family
yes.
of students.
Specific teaching environment and learning environment, I would say.
So, all right. So after primary school, we move on to secondary school. What age does that happen generally in Switzerland?
Well, in Switzerland, the terminology, you have secondary school 1 and secondary school 2. So secondary school 1 is part of the 11 years of mandatory schooling. There are different concepts in different cantons. Some still have a selection process where you have to undergo exams to get from primary school into secondary school, and others, they would just follow through with primary school during the mandatory education period.
What's the high age at a secondary school too?
Well, for the secondary level 1, you finish normally at the age 15.
Okay. And then secondary school 2 leads into university right before?
Then you have various options, of course. One is to go the equivalent of the high school, what we call gymnasium in Switzerland, or you go, for example, 2/3 choose to go through an apprenticeship program.
Okay, very interesting. And then, if a student wants to continue with the formal education at university, how does the university application process look like in Switzerland?
That's very different from the United States in various aspects. Once you have the baccalaureate, which is the end of the high school, you basically choose the university and you choose the faculty. And you do the inscription process with just a very few exceptions. For example, for medicine, medical studies, we have the numerous clauses, so there are special requirements to get in. But for all the others, you can pick the university and you can pick the faculty, and if they don't have enough seats, they have to put in a chair.
There are no universities in Switzerland with a really high rejection rate, we would say. Kind of that don't let a lot of applicants. In America, there's a lot of very selective universities.
There's no application, just inscription.
Just inscription.
You pick and choose, and they have to accommodate you. Then, however, comes, of course, the selection process. I mean, you can be ambitious and inscribe yourself into mathematics, for example. Then after one semester, you don't perform, and second either, and then you're out. So it's not at the beginning, you're completely free what you're choosing, but then you have to perform. Otherwise, you're out. But the big difference is that as a Swiss citizen for the ETH, which is the top university on the European continent, you pay per year 1,480 francs, which is roughly $1,600, not even $1,600, which means that for around $5,000 you get your bachelor degree in Switzerland, and then for about $3,500 more you can do your master. This doesn't count supplementary costs for living and so on, but study by itself, it's basically free.
Yes, it's a very reasonable price, especially when you consider the opposite being American universities. Students who don't attend university, what other post-secondary school educational opportunities are available to them? You mentioned apprenticeships earlier.
Well, in Switzerland, traditionally, universities have been limited really to the pure sciences, law, theology, medicine, and so on. And for careers which were leading to an academic career. And most of the rest was done through apprenticeship or through specialized schools. Specialized schools, for example, in graphic design, in healthcare, in music and the arts, and so on. Today, you still have about 2/3 of kids at age 15 who will start an apprenticeship. Apprenticeship then lasts there are about 250 professions which lead to either a federal diploma or a federal certificate. So that's a 2, 3, or 4-year formal education in practical terms and in schooling. So how it works is that once you're out of the compulsory school, usually first stop is with a career counselor. And the career counselor will test you, talk to you, interview you, see where you want to go, and then guide you towards the best options, considering also the market opportunities you have with a certain choice. So the first step is to find an apprenticeship position, and then once you have signed the contract, then it's put together with the school where you get the school part. But the central part is within the company where you work with the most modern tools of the trade, and you really learn your trade there.
Is that kind of apprentice relationship, is that encouraged or supplemented by the government in any way, or is that kind of a just kind of mutually beneficial relationship that's developed naturally?
No, there are actually 3 partners involved. One is the federal government and the cantons on the public side, and then very strong, and that's a difference with many other countries. It's trade and professional associations. So they build the curriculum, they take care of building, teaching the teachers, training the trainers, and building the specialized schools. Third part is then the company, who is offering, who has to invest also, because they pay a salary and they pay something to the school. But for the companies at the end, it's on average they make a benefit out of it. This goes way back when it started already in the Middle Ages with master craftsmen who took in young talent, and they formed them, and they continued to work with this master craftsmen. We had a big push in the late 19th century with the industrialization. There, many traditional jobs were lost, and new jobs were required, with higher skill requirements for those industrial jobs. So what had been very informal became more formalized, that they saw that it's just not enough what you're doing with a master craftsman or in a company. You need theoretical knowledge. That's when they started to build those schools, which in parallel will give the necessary theoretical background to what you learn in a company. This has, of course, developed enormously since those origins. Basically, the role of the federal level is uniquely to control the curriculum proposed by professional organization. And there's, of course, a shift. I said before, you have to apply for an apprenticeship position, which means this offer is reacting very fast to changes in the economy. A profession which is not required anymore, no positions are offered.
Are there any vocational education or apprenticeship opportunities that start while students are in their in secondary school, in their compulsory education, or does it all happen